Do you love the Golden Girls as much as you love Broadway? If so, we're about to make your day. We are thrilled to tell you that Jennifer Simard, two-time Tony nominee and star of the upcoming Death Becomes Her, and Patrick Hines, host of the podcasts Theater People, Broadway Backstory, and True Crime Obsessed, have just launched a brand new podcast called The Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast. The Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast is a hilarious new show recapping everyone's favorite sitcom, The Golden Girls. But it's more than your typical recap show because Jen and Patrick have a full-time researcher on their team, so each episode is jam-packed with fun facts. Like, you remember Coco, the gay chef from the pilot episode? Where did he go? Whatever happened to that actor? The Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast will give you his whole story, including its unbelievable and truly mysterious ending. Or how about this one? Did you know that Bea Arthur was a truck driver in the Marines before becoming an actress? The Golden Girls Deep Dive team has done the research, and they're going to tell you all about it. And rest assured, there's tons of Broadway tidbits sprinkled in throughout the episodes as well. I mean, how could there not be? So grab your cheesecake and meet Jen Simard and Patrick Hines out on the lanai as you follow the Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast everywhere podcasts are found.
In the spirit of reconciliation, the Theatre Thoughts podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all traditional custodians of the land on which our episodes are recorded.
I wasn't even back for a night. I got off the plane at 5:30 p.m. and then the launch was at 6:30 p.m. So I came straight from the airport.
Did you?
My suitcase was literally with me. It was truly chaotic.
That's right, because you had your passport.
I wasn't supposed to sing. Yeah, I was not supposed to sing that, and I was very jet lagged and also hungover. But one of the singers got pulled out, so I was like, oh, I'll just do it. And so that's why it was a beautiful hot mess of a time.
You're listening to the Theatre Thoughts podcast, where we dive deep into the world of theatre and celebrate the magic of the stage. I'm your host, Justin Clarke, and I'm here to guide you through insightful conversations, behind-the-scenes stories, and thought-provoking discussions about everything theatre-related. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you to connect with us on social media. You can follow us on Instagram at TheatreThoughtsAUS and TTPod_official for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and exclusive interviews. You can also find us on TikTok at Theatre Thoughts Australia for even more theatre goodness. And if you'd like to support the podcast and gain access to exclusive content, consider subscribing to our Patreon. So whether you're a seasoned theatregoer or just starting your journey, please sit back, relax, and enjoy this brand new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. I have a guest that I'm very, very, very excited to have on to chat today. They are a multi-award-winning comedian, composer, and content creator. Their shows have been recognised for their genre-bending, politically savvy comedy and garnered critical acclaim. Their film Lousical the Musical, which is name I love, swept the Green Room Awards, winning Best Production, Best Writing, Outstanding Online Achievement. They've toured their Moosehead Award solo show, Lou War vs. the Internet, making the international debut at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2023. Please welcome Lou War!
Oh my god, hi!
Thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. Yeah, because I caught you at the Hayes 2024 season release where you announced your show, Flat Earthers the Musical, which I was like...
That's the one.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. But I caught you at the end because I was like, I need to say hello to Lou because I passed you so many times at Edinburgh. And
I'm still thinking about how you said that. I'm personally offended that you didn't come up to me. What'd you say? You said to me, oh, they were doing a show. I was like, everyone's doing a show. You should have come up and said, hey.
I know.
To be honest, I was like gravitating to Australians over there, so I would have been very excited.
Yeah, because you were like, it was down near the underbelly, down the underbelly area. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I was oh, there's Lou Wall. Oh, they're doing a show. That's okay. I'll keep walking. But yeah, so that was your debut at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, very first Edinburgh.
And how did you go?
Time of my actual life. I loved it. It was so fun. I had truly the best time. Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, and you had a lot of fellow comedian friends over there as well. Like I know Michelle Brazier was there, Gillian Cosgrove, Jane Watts was there. So it was a whole bunch of you there.
Yeah, totally. I think to be honest, it was the first year that, I mean, it was my first year, so I can't really say this, but I felt like the first year Edinburgh was like properly back for international artists post pandemic, because obviously it was back last year, but there was a lot of chaos, there was still lockdown restrictions and that kind of thing. But this year it really felt like the Australians came out in force, which was super exciting. And also just really great because, you could recommend other Australians, they could recommend you. And like, it was just a big cohort of friends, which always makes Edinburgh so much nicer.
Yeah, I remember I went to see Jane and Angie's show, Jazz or a Bucket of
Oh,
Blood, which
so
I
good.
still talk about to people. They go, "What was the best show you saw?" So, well, I saw Jazz and a Bucket of Blood, and
I love that show so much.
Oh, so funny because one of the main things in it is the whole Bunnings gag, and obviously they don't have Bunnings in the UK. I remember living there, and they actually attempted to open a Bunnings. So when I heard it,
really?
I was stoked. I was like, yes, Bunnings. Okay, get my sausage sizzle, and then I think it shut down because it didn't work.
Devastating.
Which was funny.
Where did the lesbians go?
I know. And then in the show they were like, who here knows a Bunnings? And like 90% of the audience put their hands up, and they're like, fuck. It was the funniest thing.
Yep. You expect Edinburgh audiences to be like, I guess I expected them to be more UK based, but they're so international. Like the audiences are almost as international as the artists there.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm glad lesbian Bunnings reigns supreme over there as well.
It's so good. Well, we'll get to talking about your career in a second and flat earthers, which I want to really jump into. I'd love to ask you our 1 minute theatre thoughts questions and then unpack them and see, what are your thoughts on all these different facets of theatre?
Okay, great. Let's do it.
Cool. So I time like roughly a minute, and it's like whatever kind of jumps off your head, I suppose.
Okay.
Alrighty, here we go. What has been your favourite production you've seen recently?
Oh, production I've seen. There was a show in Edinburgh called Mr. TikTok, and that was by far the best thing I saw. It was like a live AI generated comedy show featuring like the most amazing tech.
The TikTok. All right. What role haven't you played yet that you'd still want to?
Oh, that's a great question. I always wanted to be in music theatre, but I can't sing well enough. But there is a role called Lena Lamont in Singing in the Rain. And essentially the character can't sing, and it's a comedy character, and she's a starlet, and she's very annoying, and I think that would be my dream. My dream role, to be in a musical, but also to not really have to sing.
Yeah. It's the best.
The dream.
Name a show that left you speechless.
Oh my God, these are such good questions. I saw Bryony Kimmings, who's a UK-based performance artist and theatre maker. She did a show called Sex Magic at Melbourne Comedy Festival in, I want to say like maybe 2015, 2014. And in it, there was this part where she got the audience to cut off their pubes and she made them into a moustache live in the show. And that, for me, that show was one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen. And truly speechless in that. I was like, I can't talk about this. It's crazy.
Excellent. Oh my goodness. I was just picturing it in my brain. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, truly.
What is your favorite production of all time?
That's so
it's a big
impossible.
one. That's a big one, isn't it?
That's such a big one. I love, it's such a basic answer, but I love Wicked. And when I saw that for the first time, it really changed the game for me.
Excellent. And the last question, which production would you most want to see come to Australia?
I mean, there's just been the announcement of Beetlejuice and Groundhog Day, which is pretty exciting.
We are feasting.
I feel like a lot of, and Dear Evan Hansen, so I feel like a lot of things are coming. I would love to see an Australian version of Hadestown. I think we have some amazing folk artists here who would absolutely crush that score.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That's roughly a minute. So let's jump back to Mr. TikTok then. So you said it was technically groundbreaking. What was it about? Like, if you could if you were to talk it to someone who's never seen it before, what was the best thing about it?
I think it's actually incredibly hard to describe. It was in a basement in Edinburgh, and essentially it was about a mid-career artist having a breakdown. The copy, I remember reading the copy in the Edinburgh Fringe brochure, and it said, um, this guy has a whopping 1,000 TikTok followers. You have to come and see it. And I was like, what do you mean? That's so silly. And it was just like it was about a mid-career artist having a breakdown, um, and trying to make it in the online sphere. And it was just chaos and brilliant. And his wife was actually up the back, or his partner up the back. He did a lot of crowd work, and his wife would then put that crowd work into the show using like AI and like bots and stuff. It's honestly indescribable, but it was like a chaotic, brilliantly funny, cursed internet love child. And I will now see everything he does.
Isn't that great? I love that. I think that's my favorite thing about festivals is you pick up artists that you will see like constantly. Like that's how I got on, you know, being a massive fan of Michelle Brazier and Gillian Cosgrove as well. Because like, I saw their shows at Melbourne Comedy and I was like, I feel really bad that I've never heard of these people before, and now I will love them until the day I die. And you just get on the train.
Exactly. And the best part is like for festival artists as well, like they're usually doing a show every year or every couple of years. So you get a new little tasting all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about your answer. The show left you speechless was sex magic. So what was it about sex magic that was just like...
Wait, maybe it's not called Sex Magic. Oh,
because I'm actually thinking Sex Magic. Was that the one at Griffin?
Because that was a show at Griffin.
Yeah.
Wait, let me do a really, really, really fast live Google.
Yeah, do it.
Sex show. What was it? Sex Idiot. Okay, it was called Sex Idiot. Yes, and essentially it was like a show that was like a mix between... Okay, so she discovers she has an STI, and she essentially goes to all the people who she slept with and like tells them about it. So it's autobiographical, it's comedy, and it was like a beautiful theater mashup. I love stuff that bends genres and then crosses genres. And I don't know if you know Bryony Kimmings, but she's a really, really phenomenal artist, and she makes a lot of autobiographical work. But I remember seeing this and it was just like pure chaos. And I don't remember much of it except for the pube situation, but I remember it like changing the game for me and really expanding what I thought comedy could be.
Yeah.
From just like a microphone on a stand, and seeing that, I was like, oh, you can... like I think a lot of people do cabaret comedy, but she really does theater comedy, and for me, I was like, that's it.
Yeah. And is that kind of where you would describe your comedy and your style sort of falls into, or do you have something well, I guess the question is, how would you describe your shows, like Lou War versus the Internet and all the other ones you've done before?
Yeah, I mean, my resume is pretty much just like comedy stand-up, but I did study theater making at university. So my real passion is theater. I think I got into comedy because stand-up as an art form is super accessible. You don't need to have much money to do it. You can access really wide variety of audiences. You can do it almost every night of the week. So that's why I started doing it. But I do love theater, but I would describe my stuff as multimedia musical comedy, I guess. Cool. I generally don't describe it as musical comedy because I think musical comedy has a really bad rap and is seen as like pretty uncool. But now that Gillian and Ruben and Michelle are coming up, I'm like, let's make musical comedy cool again.
Yeah, exactly. They're like the three that are kind of like really leading it, aren't they?
Truly. But yeah, I describe it as like multimedia comedy.
Okay, awesome. Well, then the last one I want to unpack is Wicked. So what is it about Wicked?
No, I'm depressed that I gave this answer. I feel like
no, don't be. People love Wicked.
I mean, people love Wicked, but then I think about when I saw the first version of Wicked, and I would have seen a slime tutorial of it, which is like a YouTube recording of a Broadway show, like illegally filmed.
Yeah, and they named
which is pretty much how I've watched. Yeah, to get around the copyright, which is pretty much how I've watched every musical I've ever watched before I moved to a city. I think for me, just the songs in Wicked, the songwriting is brilliant, and like to have songs that are such an amalgamation of pop and that perfect MT belt. And also like I think a lot of theatre nerds come out of fan fiction and come out of, you know, pre-existing text that has been made, and Wicked is essentially that. It's essentially fan fiction. It's, you know, the Wizard of Oz on crack, and it's the backstory, and there's so much like intertextual layers in that which really excite me. And yeah, it's just a beautiful story of friendship. I love it. Actually, to be honest, I probably like it because I really did think it was a lesbian story.
Oh, okay.
Because even like the poster, like they look like they're kissing, and then I saw it and I was like, oh, it's not gay, but
Could
you know,
be.
a girl can dream. Truly.
That's so good. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I love hearing everyone's different thoughts. Oh, Hadestown. So yes, because I totally agree with you with Hadestown. It has to be like every time they say, "Oh, there's a massive announcement coming," I'm like, if it's not Hadestown, my day's gonna be ruined because it needs
Truly.
to come.
It needs to come. I would so love to see that. I mean, Hadestown's getting a revival in the UK, but they've just they've just finished casting it. But it's funny because it's like still attached to its original creators, so it's
okay,
original directors. So I do wonder if it will come here.
Yeah,
because if they're willing to, sell it as a product without its original direction, but we'll see. We will see.
Wait and see. Excellent. Well, let's change direction then. Let's jump onto you. Let's learn about the career of Lou Wall. Where did it all start for you?
I guess I can probably put it back to I went to school in a town called Cooma, which is a little town in the Snowy Mountains in New South Wales, and I kind of did everything. I really loved sports. I really loved academia. There wasn't much theatre in town. There was fuck all theatre. There was no theatre in town. There was one community theatre, but when I was growing up, it wasn't running that much. They'd have a show like every maybe 5 years or something. But this guy came to town to run a comedy workshop, and I did the comedy workshop, and it was literally me and some farmers, and it was at the local library, and then they were like, let's put on a stand-up comedy night. And I was like 17 at the time. I can't explain. The other guys were like 50. And I was like, let's do it. And then we did it, and I just had the best night of my life. It was like in like a shed in town. And I was like, oh, I'm so addicted to this. And then from there, I auditioned for a bunch of acting schools, got into VCA, studied at VCA, finished VCA, kind of wasn't getting the roles I was getting, so started doing comedy, and then 6 years later ended up here.
So cool. I love that. I love that so much. It's fascinating. I'd like talk to so many people trying to see like the trajectories of each one and the roads they take. I find just deeply fascinating.
It's always.
No, sorry. What were you going to say?
Sorry, you go.
No, you know.
I truly have no idea. Sorry.
Oh goodness. So then you've won Green Room Awards for Lousical the Musical. What was it like getting that sort of recognition for your work and seeing like something like Green Room Awards are very highly regarded. So winning something like that, what was that feeling?
It was amazing. I actually won the year that we were in lockdown.
Oh, incredible.
So it was like this really strange thing of I'd made this I was going to do the show called Lousical the Musical at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and then I think it was literally like 12 days before we opened, the comedy festival got cancelled and we got put into our first lockdown. And so I kind of just decided to make it online, and so I filmed this like what I can only describe as a feature film in my bedroom. And put that up, and then I won the green rooms for it the next year, but the next year we were still in a lockdown, a different the 2.0 that Melbourne had. And so it was kind of this like very strange thing where it was like all online. I didn't go to the ceremony because I was in another Zoom for another work call or something, so it just kind of like came and went, and then I didn't really like register until I was like out in the world again. But it was very, very fucking cool, and my ego has never been the same.
I feel like that would be me if I ever won an award where they're like, Justin Hughes' award for podcasting. I'd be like, well, put that on my resume.
Truly. It's now my middle name. Yeah, legit.
That's great. Excellent. Well, we're just going to take a quick ad break, and then we'll talk about Flat Earthers. Okay, so Flat Earthers Musical is coming to the Haze. It's the joint production with Griffin Theatre for their 2020 4 season. So you after you were just back from Edinburgh for like what a night, not even. You came to Hayes and you did a number from the show. So I guess, did you want to? What I'll do, I'll actually read just a little snippet of the description, and then I'd love you to just.
I want to tell you before that,
you know.
I wasn't even back for a night. I got off the plane at 5:30 p.m. and then the launch was at 6:30 p.m. So I came straight from the airport.
Did you?
My suitcase was literally with me. It was truly chaotic.
That's right, because you had your passport.
I wasn't supposed to sing. Yeah, I was not supposed to sing that, and I was very jet lagged and also hungover. But one of the singers got pulled out, so I was like, "Oh, I'll just do it." And so that's why it was a beautiful hot mess of a time.
It was so good though. The song, the name, the name's just gone straight out.
Illuminati Party.
Illuminati Party. That was it, and it was so good. I loved it. It was like perfect sort of introduction. So you've written the book and lyrics, as well as the songwriting alongside Gene Tong, and the production by James Gales. The little snippet that I can give is that this is from the description. In this beautiful and chaotic electro-pop musical epic, star-crossed lesbians tumble into the depths of the dark web, where the most far-out dangerous conspiracy theories turn out to be very, very real. So I loved Little Catch. So go for it. Tell us everything you can possibly without giving too much away, I suppose.
Oh my God. So, yeah, I mean, what do you want to know? Do you want to know plot? Do you want to know writing process? Maybe you ask me specific questions.
Yeah, give us the plot first. Yeah, give us the plot first.
Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. The plot is crazy. I was actually explaining it to my friend the other day, and she was like, "Oh, that's Psycho," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't quite think of it, but it is truly crazy." So essentially, the plot is we have two protagonists. We have Rhea and Flick, and Rhea is she's an internet celebrity. She's a conspiracy debunker. On YouTube. Think of a like left-wing Joe Rogan sort almost. And then we have Flick, who is a flat earther. So Rhea is a globe earther, Flick is a flat earther, and they meet and they fall in beautiful lesbian love, and then they realize that their views of the world, quite literally, are very different. And then so it's this kind of like a lesbian West Side story unfolding plot to see if they can live in the same world. But it starts definitely in this, like, you know, this realistic online world until then it becomes very not supernatural, but very music theater whack. There's like a lesbian love triangle with the moms. We meet Miss Prism, who's the song you saw is her song. She's from the Illuminati Party. She essentially wants to detonate the whole world to make it flat. There's all these conspiracies that come to life. Rhea, you know, ends up this is honestly the most terrible plot, but there's so many strands in it that I'm just going to give you a basic overview. Rhea ends up kind of becoming this cult-like figure who links every single conspiracy theory back to flat earth. So all the conspiracy theories unite. It's just like a hot mess of a post-truth world in a electronic pop musical.
So good, so good. I think it's I love the more theater I see and the more musical comedy I see, the wackier and more cooked the better. I think I just want to be taken on
I would say that this is, on a scale of 1 to cooked, this is 10 out of 10.
Excellent. So where did the songwriting process start? Like, where did the whole idea where you go, let's make a musical, flat earthers, let's go?
Yeah, it actually started with a very like stupid scenario. So Gene and James had written a musical called Romeo's Not the Only Fruit, which I was in, and so we all worked on that together. And then an opportunity came up to apply for like a music theater scholarship, essentially. And someone asked us if we wanted to apply, and we're like, yeah, like we really want to write a musical. But then we're like, what do we want to write a musical about? We're sitting in a cafe one day, and I guess like a lot of my work has tended to be about conspiracy theories. I wrote a show called That One Time I Joined the Illuminati. Like, I just love trolling incels online, essentially. And then I think we're in this cafe, and I was like, oh, what about we call it like Flat Earthers the Musical? And so the name came first.
Right.
And then we started writing it for this application. We sent in the application, it did not get through. And then we just kind of kept writing it. We got a bit of funding from Arts Centre to do a development. And, you know, there's many different iterations. At one stage, it was set in a town on the edge of the earth who thought like in a flat earth cult. And that involved like the Bermuda Triangle and a crazy cruise ship that went wrong. Like there's been so many iterations of it. But it kind of just morphed over the years into this. And then after the Arts Centre development, we were lucky enough to get picked up by Griffin Theatre and supported by the Malcolm Robertson Foundation to write the full book. So yeah, it's kind of just been a crazy maze of like 3 years of us just like doing a bit here and there, workshop here, workshop there, getting some amazing music theatre artists in Australia to sing through our songs and just seeing where it goes from there. But yeah, it did start off as a joke, and then here we are.
And do you think it'll have life beyond this production? Like, would you want to kind of revisit it after you premiere it and then keep developing it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the goal for every musical ever, is to have a life beyond its first production. We're super excited to be with Griffin and Hayes. I feel like they're the perfect little main stage, but like freaky enough, indie enough vibe for our crazy musical. But yeah, I mean, James and I now live in Sydney, but we were all living in Melbourne for like 10 years. So we'd love to bring it to Melbourne. Like, obviously I'd be lying if I said, you know, I want it to go everywhere. I'd love to take it to the Fringe, straight to Broadway, you know, the vibes, you know, the vibes.
I know that. You could definitely live off Broadway and then make its way up.
Exactly. So that's the dream is as big as the show, I guess.
That's great. Oh, amazing. Well, after hearing and seeing you perform Illuminati Party, I was like, this is very, it's very much like, you can very much tell it's your voice and your writing coming through it. And then the influence of, Jean and James as well, adding on to it. So I'm very excited to see what the final product is. I feel like I best prepare myself before I go in.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely you'll need a champagne before you see it, I reckon.
Excellent. Well, I do have a question that I've been asking a lot of artists, and I'd love to hear your answer on it. But I'd love to know how you think the theatre industry, I guess in general in Australia, how it's changed over the years and how those changes have sort of impacted the work that you do and the work that you create.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I kind of left the theatre industry pretty much straight out of uni because I found I love indie theatre. But the theatre industry is pretty white and pretty inaccessible if you don't fit a certain criteria. I think it's changed in that it's becoming more diverse, at least on the stages it's more diverse. I think the production teams are often still super cis, super white, super able-bodied, but we're seeing more representation on our stages, which is really fucking exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's always been something that I have loved so dearly. I just find the financial barriers of putting on a show really difficult, which is kind of why I moved into stand-up. But I always think that theatre as an art form is really on the front foot of where pop culture is kind of heading. And I know people will be like, oh, there's so much Shakespeare, there's so much, there's so much Brecht and all that stuff. But I'm like, if you go to a festival in your city, if you go to a Fringe festival, I think Fringes are the best places to see theatre, and you see some grassroots shit, you will always see the next generation of people who are going to be on TV, like give them 5 years and they will be there. Like, I really think some of the best creatives come from theatre. It gives you a chance to exercise your muscles, and like, I don't know, there's something in the dramatic arts that I'm just like, there's some kind of crack in that shit that just draws people back. Sorry, that was a really roundabout answer. I feel like I didn't even answer your question, but
no, you did.
Yeah, I don't really. No. I feel like I'm not I kind of feel like I'm not in the theatre industry. I just absorb a lot of it. I watch a lot of it. But I am always keen to see it become more accessible.
Yeah.
And obviously that comes with government funding, which is not huge at the moment, but
another thing, isn't it?
Hopefully in the future. Yeah. When I get rich, shall be funding theatre.
You go and fund it all. Well, I agree what you said about these actors getting drawn back to the theatre, because I'm always fascinated by, you see these big movie stars in movies and so on, and And if you're a theatre person, you'll go, it's so-and-so who was in the National Theatre production. They're a theatre person. And then all these people go, what? What do you mean they do theatre? And it's where
every good thing started.
Exactly. They make some of the best, and you can tell when they transfer to screen because they're some of the best characters because they've had that theatre experience, I think.
Totally. And I think like screen acting and theatre acting are very different things, but like I think it always serves you if you go from theatre to screen.
Definitely.
Like I think it just provides you a technical platform of like such a high caliber that you can use across so many different things.
Yeah, totally agree. Excellent. Well, Lou, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I've very much enjoyed chatting to you and hearing all about Flat Earthers and about your career as well. And next time I see you, I promise I will stop and say hello instead of walking straight past and being like, oh my goodness, it's Lou. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so lovely.
A massive thank you to Lou Wall for joining us as our very special guest on this week's episode. You can watch Lou Wall perform Illuminati Party at the Hayes Theatre 2024 season announcement by heading over to our YouTube channel. Get your tickets now to Flat Earthers the Musical playing at the Hayes Theatre from the 11th of October to the 9th of November 2024. Head to griffintheatre.com.au or hayestheatre.com.au/event, or simply follow the links in this episode's description. This episode was produced by Echidna Audio. Follow them on Instagram at Echidna Audio for all their audio services. Once again, if you enjoyed our podcast, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts and head to the link in this episode's description for our Instagram account, TikTok, YouTube, and Patreon. My name's Justin Clarke, and I'll see you next time here on the Theatre Thoughts Podcast.
Disney's Aladdin on Broadway is among the longest-running shows in Broadway history. But did you know that it almost never came to be?
We walked out of Seattle thinking, okay, we don't have it. We have a lot of work to do.
But against tremendous odds, in March of 2024, they celebrated 10 years on Broadway.
Disney did a great job because they really took the notes.
Go behind the magic and listen to this never-before-heard story, the magical making of Disney's Aladdin on Broadway. Available everywhere you can get your podcasts.
Can you identify an alphabet just from her defying gravity war cry?
Can you name every actress in the Wicked to Waitress pipeline?
Or does the phrase witch switch mean anything to you?
Well then,
good news!
My name's Quincy.
And my name's Kevin.
And we're the hosts of Sentimental Men.
We're here to talk,
and maybe scream,
about our favorite women in musical theater, the witches of Wicked. So if spending a Friday night in a no-good deed rabbit hole on YouTube sounds like your idea of a good time, then Sentimental Men is the podcast for you.
And with guests like Jessica Vosk, Lucy Jones, and Stephanie J. Block, chances are we've already got an episode with your favorite alphabet.
Or Glinda, like Laura Bell Bundy, Brittany Johnson, and Mackenzie Kurtz.
So pause your riff compilations, put down your copy of The Grimmery, and give Sentimental Men a listen.
You can find us on the Broadway Podcast Network or wherever you listen to podcasts.